Ladies and gentlemen, it's been quite a while since I picked up Sweet Business. This is a weapon that's been in Destiny 2 since the launch of the game. I used it quite a bit back in year 1, but as of late, not so much. I got the catalyst from the long since retired faction rally event, secured the kills to unlock it, and tossed it in the vault, where it's more or less been sitting ever since. But a lot of people have been asking me about Sweet Business. And while I quit doing full-fledged viewer-requested weapon reviews quite a while back, simply because I was driving myself crazy trying to get through the list that I had amassed, just given the sheer amount of people who have showed interest in this weapon as of late, I figured I could take a quick break from weapons that were altered or introduced in Season of the Chosen and have a look. So we'll see how this weapon that's been around for the entire lifespan of the game is holding up in Season 13. And if at any point during the course of this video you find it useful, helpful, or enjoyable, please remember to leave it a like. And to catch more Destiny 2 content presented by yours truly, consider subscribing to the Ironworker Gaming channel. But let's get into the review with a look at Sweet Business's stats and perks. Alright, Sweet Business is an exotic kinetic auto rifle firing at a base 360 rounds per minute with a very large 150 round magazine. For the stats, as always, we'll pull in some solid numbers from Destiny Tracker. And they're looking pretty rough. The range here is on the low end when compared to most other auto rifles, but the reload and the handling are absolutely abysmal. But the stability at 60 is pretty decent, and we do have some strong marks in the aim assist department and the recoil direction. The intrinsic trait is Payday. Larger magazine, increased accuracy when firing from the hip, picking up ammo for this weapon immediately reloads it. Our exotic perk is Business Time. Sustained fire boosts the range and rate of fire. And this weapon does have a catalyst available. When this weapon is fully spun up, the flinch from incoming damage is greatly reduced. But if you're a player who hasn't got your hands on Sweet Business yet, this is a random world drop or could be purchased from Xur if he happens to be selling it on a given week. The catalyst, while once available in the faction rally event, is now a random drop as well. And once obtained, you will need 250 multi-kills with Sweet Business to unlock it. But let's move into the PvE section to check out Sweet Business's damage, functionality, and performance. Starting out, let's take a look at that increasing fire rate. When we initially pull the trigger, this weapon begins to fire at 360 rounds per minute, and after 16 rounds expended, we will be shooting at 900 rounds per minute. And you can maintain this rate of fire for the remainder of the magazine, as long as you're laying on the trigger. You can release the trigger for just a moment and get back on it, and this weapon will remain spun up, but you do need to be quick. The reload speed, with no mods or enhancements of any kind, will take a very lengthy 3.65 seconds before Sweet Business is ready to fire again. You can speed things up a little bit by throwing on an auto rifle loader mod. That will bring the time down to 2.84 seconds. Or you could just walk over a primary ammo brick and your gun will be fully reloaded and ready to go. For the recoil and bullet spread, when aiming down sights, we get a very nice tight vertical grouping considering we're firing 150 rounds out of this thing. But if you're firing from the hip, I mean, that's not so pretty. But onto the damage numbers, and do keep in mind that damage numbers in PvE are variable. They can change depending on the scaling of the content, the power gap between you and your enemy target, and even with different enemy types, you may see different damage values. So for continuity's sake, I always test in the same lost sector against the same target. And I do my best to give you some comparable comparisons to weigh the weapon that we're reviewing against. But with Sweet Business, we're hitting our buddy Carl the Colossus for 1,208 points of damage on a crit, and 862 points of damage to the body. So in a perfect world, if every bullet in this magazine lands as a crit, we're looking at 181,200 points of total damage. And from the initial trigger pull till our magazine is completely empty, we're looking at 10.68 seconds. So damage per second within a single magazine when using Sweet Business comes in at 16,966. I think maybe our closest point of comparison would be Tommy's matchbook. We have a big magazine size, it uses primary ammo, and it's exotic. It is an energy weapon, but I think it's our best measuring stick. Tommy's crits for 953 points of damage at base, and when an ignition trigger kicks in, it begins critting for 1,890 points of damage. So total damage output for a full magazine with Tommy's is 170,280 points of damage. The entire magazine is spent in 8.3 seconds, so damage per second is going to be 20,513. Now, if it's imperative that you stay in the kinetic slot, we could look at Suros. It's exotic, it's kinetic, and it does have a fire rate increase with the spinning up fire mode, but it has a much smaller magazine size. It also has increasing damage when the magazine is half empty. Crits start out hitting for 1,069 points of damage, and the final bullet finishes with 1,176 points of damage. After totaling out the damage for each bullet, Suros can hit for 39,700 points of damage in a single mag. Time to empty is 2.96 seconds, so damage per second comes in at 13,412. So the single target damage output that we're seeing from Sweet Business isn't too bad. It doesn't have the same punch as Tommy's matchbook, but then again, you don't have that self-damage to contend with. And maybe Suros could creep up on it over the course of several reloads, because it does have a far better reload speed. But if there are primary ammo bricks laying on the ground, and in PvE there oftentimes are, you can just systematically move over them as you're damaging a target, the full magazine will be reloaded, and you can sustain some damage for a very long time. And while Sweet Business won't keep up with the damage output that we can see from a special or heavy weapon, if primary bullets are all you have left in a boss fight, this gun can hold its own. As far as ad clearing goes, Sweet Business does a pretty solid job here also. While there's no blast or AoE damage associated with this gun, unless you're a warlock running chromatic fire, which can be a lot of fun, the sheer number of bullets that this gun can throw out will shred up any red bar target very quickly. With major targets, you are going to need to focus on them for a little bit longer, but it really doesn't take all that long to melt them down either. And in ad-heavy encounters and activities, there is almost always plenty of primary ammo bricks laying around. You may get bored of holding down the trigger for so long. You can shoot this thing for what seems like forever, as long as there's ammo bricks on the ground. And Sweet Business does come equipped with armor-piercing rounds, so if mobs are really packed in, you are going to get some damage from the punch-through. And, as always, if you're a Titan running Actium War Rig, you get to have a little bit more fun with this weapon. Sweet Business has an extremely large magazine size, so you're going to see a huge benefit from those rounds being reloaded back into the magazine. This gun does tend to struggle a little bit in higher level content though. Enemies have much larger health pools, and will eat a lot more bullets before they finally go down. And you'll be holding your reticle on a target for an extended period of time, so you're kind of open to take damage. Enemies are going to be hitting harder in higher level content. Sweet Business's strength relies on being fully spun up and maintaining a constant stream of damage. If you have to move in and out of cover to get your health back on a frequent basis, Sweet Business loses a lot of its effectiveness. And the effective range on this gun is pretty short, which we're going to look at in the PvP section. You will be able to stretch things back a little bit further when the weapon is fully spun up, due to the exotic perk. But extremely effective at long range, this weapon is not. And if you're watching this review in Season of the Chosen, auto rifle champion mods are not featured in the seasonal artifact. If they were, maybe Sweet Business could have more of a leg to stand on in endgame content, but it's just hard to justify using it in higher level activities right now. Let's move into PvP though, and see how Sweet Business is doing in there. Alright, as always, starting out with our damage numbers. And just so you know, I did stopwatch the time to kills just to make things a little bit simpler with the increasing fire rate. But anyhow, Sweet Business will hit for 22 points of damage on a crit and 16 points of damage to the body. On the initial trigger pull, our optimal time to kill will come in at 1.33 seconds by landing 9 crits. And our body shot time to kill is going to come in at 1.68 seconds with 13 shots landed. But when the weapon is fully spun up, the optimal time to kill will come in at just under 0.6 seconds, and the body shot time to kill will come in just over 0.8 seconds. For the physical range, on the initial trigger pull, we're going to hit for full damage from 22 meters in. But once the weapon's humming at its max fire rate, we can step back as far as 27 meters before seeing damage fall off. Keep in mind though, if you are firing this thing from the hip, your base optimal range will only be 14 meters. Versus a Guardian and a Roaming Super, if we're able to lay on the trigger and keep on their head, we can down them in approximately 1.28 seconds by landing 20 crits. As far as performance goes, the time to kills when this weapon is shooting at its max fire rate are excellent. And it's almost completely passive to achieve them. They're not kill activated, and they don't require a damage buff. All you need to do is hold down the trigger and let the gun spin for a few moments. You can really take players off guard with how quickly you're going to drop them. It's especially satisfying when you drop an overzealous shotgun rusher who's heading your way just before they close the gap on you. The large magazine size on Sweet Business, paired with the great time to kills, make this a very useful tool for dealing with multiple enemy targets in the same area. It's also a very solid team support weapon. Even if you're not physically securing your kills, you can put boatloads of bullets downrange. This gives your teammates the ability to mop up kills on Guardians who are already wounded, and you net defeats. One of the scariest things that I ever squared off against in the Crucible was a coordinated 6-stack of Sight and Rampart Titans, all using Sweet Business. There was never a time where a barricade wasn't present, and these players were never off on their own. It was a true 6-man ball of death rolling through the Crucible map at all times. The team shot synergy that they had with Sweet Business was nightmare fuel. Especially when given the fact that all they had to do was run over a primary ammo brick and they were reloaded. But there are several ways to get in trouble with this gun. First, it's easy to expect a little too much out of it. It's a ferocious, aggressive feeling minigun. In real life, the M134 does a great job of turning anything in front of it into Swiss cheese almost instantly. And in the movies, you can clear cut a jungle if you're being stalked by the Predator. In Destiny, this is a primary weapon and does have a time to kill. A very solid time to kill when fully spun, but there are weapons out there that will outgun you. Then, the physical range is not great. Don't overcommit to engagements at extended ranges. Odds are currently that an enemy player is running a 120 hand cannon or Dead Man's Tail. Both are going to best you at range. Next, you're giving up a lot of mobility to use this weapon. Sweet Business wants boots on the ground and your finger on the trigger. This isn't really a weapon that you can hop over a piece of cover or slide into a lane with and engage immediately because of that spin up time. You do have great time to kills once you're fully spun, but the base time to kills are extremely bad. And the inner accuracy on this thing is pretty terrible. You can see how much that reticle blooms out when our Guardian leaves the ground. And believe me, it feels as bad as it looks. The hipfire on this weapon is perfectly serviceable, but it does carry a huge amount of recoil with sustained fire. We saw that in the PvE section where my Guardian had nearly done a backflip by the end of the magazine. Aiming down sights can alleviate this greatly, and it boosts your physical range. So this is not a hipfire only weapon. But when aiming down sights, you do have that obnoxious muzzle flash to deal with. And Sweet Business does have poor handling, so that means slower weapon swap speed and slower aim down sight speed. And lastly, a rule that I always try to adhere to with this weapon is never, ever, ever engage the enemy player unless you are fully spun. Sometimes you won't have a choice. If the enemy gets in your personal space before you're ready for them, things are gonna go badly. If you see red on the radar, make sure you're looking in that direction, and get this thing humming before you break cover to engage. The fast max fire rate time to kills are your biggest asset with this gun, and you need to take advantage of them. If you're just constantly running around out of cover trying to blast at players on a whim, there's a good chance you're gonna have a bad time. For the verdict, Sweet Business, as a whole, really isn't doing all that bad. In PvE, it seems totally fine in low to mid-level content, so if you got that chopper gunner power fantasy stuck in your head, I mean, use away. But being a lower range exotic primary weapon that can't deal with champions currently, Sweet Business is gonna hit a hard wall when heading into endgame content. There's just a lot of better exotics out there for Legend and Master Tier Lost sectors or high-level Nightfalls. In PvP, for the right player with the right mindset, I think Sweet Business can still get the job done, as long as you play to this weapon's strengths and know its limitations. It does take a little bit more thought and anticipation to really be effective with this gun, at least more than one might think when they first lay eyes on it. But if your playstyle is in line with what Sweet Business has to offer, this could be a pretty solid choice still. And if you did enjoy this video, please remember to leave it a like, and consider subscribing to the Ironworker Gaming channel to catch much more Destiny 2 content in the very near future. If you'd like to catch me live, I will occasionally be streaming right here on YouTube. And if you'd like to contact me, you can look for Ironworker814 on Twitter, join our community Discord, link will be in the description, or comment down below and I will do my best to get back to you. And with all that being said, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to check out this weapon review. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.